If you had told me a year ago that my own son would try to erase me from his life with a smile and a cruise ticket, I would have laughed. I would have said, "Not David, he's a good man. He's my boy." But life has a way of teaching you the hardest truths when you least expect them. My name is Evelyn Parker. I'm 66 years old, and I've spent most of my life believing that love and sacrifice would always be enough to keep a family together. I was wrong. It started with a golden envelope, the kind you see in travel agency commercials, glossy and promising adventure. David showed up at my door on a rainy Thursday, his wife Rachel trailing behind him with a bouquet of lilies and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Mom, you've done so much for us," David said, pressing the envelope into my hands. "You deserve a break, a real vacation. 7 days in the Caribbean, all expenses paid. First class, ocean view, the works. I should have been overjoyed. I should have hugged him and thanked him and started packing right then and there. But something in his voice, too bright, too rehearsed, made me pause. Rachel chimed in. "We want you to relax, Evelyn. You're always worrying about everyone else. Let us take care of you for once." She squeezed my arm, her nails digging in just a little too hard. I opened the envelope and pulled out the ticket. The ship's name, the Sapphire Dream, was printed in elegant blue script. The itinerary was impressive. Nassau, St. Thomas, San Juan, and back to Miami. I blinked at the dates, then at the return flight information. There was none. "Is there a return ticket?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. David laughed, waving a hand. "Oh, the agency will send it separately. It's all digital these days. Don't worry, Mom. Everything's taken care of." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that my son, the boy I'd raised through scraped knees and broken hearts, would never send me away without a way home. But the doubt lingered, a shadow at the edge of my thoughts. That night, as I packed my suitcase, I found myself moving slowly, folding each blouse and pair of slacks with care. I thought about the last few months, David's sudden distance, Rachel's clipped phone calls, the way they'd started talking in low voices when they thought I wasn't listening. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was lucky to have a son who cared enough to send me on a cruise. The morning of my departure, the house felt emptier than usual. I made a pot of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the cruise ticket. I almost called David to ask again about the return flight, but pride stopped me. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. I didn't want to give him another reason to keep his distance. The taxi arrived right on time. The driver, a cheerful woman named Carla, helped me with my bags and chatted about her own mother's love of cruises. "You're going to have the time of your life, Miss Parker," she said as we pulled up to the port. "Just relax and let the sea take your worries away." The Sapphire Dream was even more magnificent in person. 12 decks of gleaming white, balconies like rows of pearls, and a line of passengers snaking up the gangway. I handed over my documents to a smiling attendant who welcomed me aboard with a glass of champagne and a map of the ship. My cabin was on the 8th deck, with a private balcony and a view of the endless blue. I set my suitcase on the bed and took a deep breath, trying to let the excitement in. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this really was a gift, a chance to start fresh. I spent the first afternoon exploring the ship. There was a library, a spa, 3 restaurants, and a pool that sparkled in the sun. I watched families laughing, couples holding hands, children darting between deck chairs. I felt a pang of loneliness, but I pushed it aside. This was my time, my adventure. That evening, I dressed for dinner in my best navy dress and made my way to the main dining room. The maitre d' seated me at a table by the window, where the sunset painted the ocean in shades of gold and rose. I ordered a glass of wine and tried to savor the moment. Halfway through my meal, my phone buzzed. It was a message from David. "Hope you're having fun, Mom. Don't worry about a thing. Love you." I stared at the screen, my heart twisting. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that love was enough. I set my phone down and tried to focus on the meal, but my appetite had vanished. The words, "don't worry about a thing," echoed in my mind, both comforting and unsettling. I watched the other diners, some laughing, some lost in conversation, some like me, alone with their thoughts. I wondered how many of them were running from something, or towards something, or simply trying to find a place to belong. After dinner, I wandered the ship's promenade, letting the sea breeze tangle my hair. The stars were just beginning to appear, scattered across the sky like diamonds. I leaned on the railing and closed my eyes, listening to the gentle rush of the waves. For a moment, I let myself believe that everything was fine, that I was just another passenger on a dream vacation. But as I made my way back to my cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I checked my email, hoping for a message from the travel agency about my return flight. Nothing. I scrolled through my messages, rereading David's words, searching for reassurance. Instead, I found myself replaying every conversation, every odd glance, every moment that didn't quite add up. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't rest. I tossed and turned, the ship's gentle rocking doing little to soothe my nerves. At some point, I must have drifted off, because I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was a text from Rachel. "Hope you're enjoying yourself, Evelyn. Don't forget to take your blood pressure meds. Let us know if you need anything." I stared at the message, my chest tightening. Rachel had never been the type to fuss over me. Her concern felt forced, like a line from a script. I replied with a simple, "Thank you, Rachel. I'm fine. The ship is beautiful." I spent the next day exploring the ports of call. Nassau was a blur of color and sound. Vendors selling trinkets, children playing in the surf, the scent of fried fish and coconut in the air. I bought a small seashell necklace for myself, a token of independence, and wandered the market until my feet ached. Back on the ship, I found myself drawn to the library. The quiet, the smell of old paper, the rows of books, it felt like a sanctuary. I picked out a mystery novel and settled into a corner, losing myself in someone else's troubles for a while. That evening, as I was getting ready for dinner, I realized I'd forgotten my blood pressure medication. I searched my suitcase, my purse, every pocket, but it was nowhere to be found. Panic fluttered in my chest. I remembered packing it, setting the bottle on the bathroom counter as I double-checked my list. Had I left it at home? I called the ship's medical office, hoping they might have a spare prescription. The nurse was kind but firm. "We can't dispense medication without a doctor's note. Miss Parker, if you can have your physician fax us a prescription, we'll be happy to help." I tried calling my doctor's office, but it was after hours. I left a message, hoping someone would get back to me in the morning. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking. I felt foolish for forgetting something so important, but beneath the embarrassment was a deeper fear. What if I got sick? What if something happened and I couldn't get help? I decided to call David. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful. "Hey, Mom! How's the cruise?" "It's beautiful, David. But I think I left my medication at home. I can't find it anywhere." There was a pause, just long enough to make me wonder if the call had dropped. "Oh, that's too bad, Mom. I'm sure the ship's doctor can help. They need a prescription." I left a message for Dr. Patel, but I'm worried. "Don't worry, Mom. Just relax. Enjoy yourself. I'm sure it'll work out." His words were meant to reassure, but they only made me feel more alone. I hung up and sat in the quiet, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. That night, I dreamed of home, of the kitchen filled with sunlight, of David as a little boy, of laughter and warmth. I woke with tears on my cheeks, longing for a time when love felt simple and safe. The next morning, I woke early, the sky outside my balcony just beginning to lighten. I made myself a cup of tea with the little kettle in my cabin and sat outside, watching the horizon turn from gray to gold. The sea was calm, the ship gliding forward as if nothing in the world could disturb its peace. But inside I was restless. I checked my phone. No new messages from the doctor, no updates from David or Rachel. I tried to tell myself it was just a small hiccup, that I'd get my medication soon, but the unease wouldn't leave me. I decided to distract myself with a walk around the ship. The Sapphire Dream was waking up, staff setting out breakfast buffets, children running down the halls, couples holding hands and planning their day. I smiled at a few familiar faces from dinner, but I felt like a ghost, drifting through someone else's life. At breakfast, I sat alone, picking at a plate of fruit. I overheard a group of women at the next table chatting about their families, their grandchildren, their plans for the day. I wanted to join in, to feel that sense of belonging, but something held me back. I was too preoccupied, too uncertain. After breakfast, I wandered into the art gallery, letting the colors and shapes wash over me. I paused in front of a painting of a stormy sea, the waves crashing against a rocky shore. I thought about how quickly life could change, how a single moment could turn calm into chaos. As I left the gallery, I nearly bumped into a woman about my age. Her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes bright and kind. "Excuse me," she said, smiling. "I'm Gloria Bennett. I think we're neighbors. I'm in cabin 842. I introduced myself, grateful for the distraction. We chatted about the ship, the ports of call, the best places to get coffee. Gloria had a warmth about her, a steadiness that made me feel safe. She invited me to join her for lunch, and I accepted, relieved to have a friend on board. Over lunch, Gloria shared stories of her own family, her daughter in Seattle, her late husband, her love of travel. I found myself opening up, telling her about David and Rachel, about the cruise, about my missing medication. She listened without judgment, her eyes full of understanding. "Sometimes," she said gently, "the people we love most are the ones who surprise us the most." "Not always in good ways," I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "I just want to believe the best in them. I want to believe this trip is a gift, not something else." Gloria reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not alone, Evelyn. If you need anything, you come find me. Promise?" I promised, and for the first time since boarding the ship, I felt a little less adrift. That afternoon, I tried the library again, but I couldn't focus on my book. My mind kept circling back to the missing return ticket, the missing medication, the strange way David had avoided my questions. I checked my email again. Still nothing from the travel agency, nothing from my doctor. I decided to visit the passenger services desk. The attendant, a young man named Lucas, greeted me with a practiced smile. "How can I help you, Miss Parker?" "I just wanted to check on my travel arrangements," I said, trying to sound casual. "I haven't received any information about my return flight," Lucas typed on his computer, his brow furrowing. "Let me see. I have your reservation for the cruise, but I don't see a return flight booked." "That's unusual. Most packages include round-trip airfare." My heart thudded in my chest. "Is there any way to confirm with the travel agency?" "I can send them a message, but it might take a day or two to hear back. In the meantime, if you'd like, I can help you book a return flight now, just to be safe." I hesitated, thinking of my limited funds. "Let me wait a bit longer. Maybe it's just a mix-up." "Of course, Miss Parker. If you need anything, just let us know." I thanked him and walked away, my mind spinning. Was it really just a mistake? Or was there something more sinister at play? That evening, I met Gloria for dinner. We sat by the window, watching the sun sink into the sea. I told her about the missing return ticket, about my conversation with Lucas. Gloria listened, her expression serious. "Evelyn, I don't want to worry you, but you need to be careful. Sometimes when things don't add up, it's because someone doesn't want them to." I nodded, her words echoing my own fears. "I just wish I knew what to do," she smiled gently. "You trust your instincts, and you remember. You're stronger than you think." That night, I lay awake in my cabin, listening to the distant thrum of the ship's engines and the soft hush of the waves against the hull. I replayed every conversation with David and Rachel, every odd moment from the past few months. I thought about the missing return ticket, the medication I was sure I'd packed, the way Rachel's text had sounded more like a reminder than genuine concern. I tried to tell myself it was all a coincidence, that I was letting my imagination run wild, but the unease wouldn't leave me. The next morning, I woke to a knock at my door. I opened it to find Gloria, holding 2 cups of coffee and a plate of pastries. "I thought you might like some company for breakfast," she said, her smile warm and reassuring. We sat on my balcony, sipping coffee and watching the sun rise over the endless blue. Gloria chatted about her plans for the day, a yoga class, a cooking demonstration, maybe a swim in the pool. I listened, grateful for her presence, but my mind kept drifting back to my worries. After breakfast, I decided to try the medical office again. This time, the nurse on duty was able to reach my doctor's office. An hour later, I had a new bottle of medication in my hand, and a wave of relief washed over me. At least one problem was solved. I spent the afternoon with Gloria, exploring the ship's art gallery and attending a lecture on Caribbean history. For a few hours, I let myself relax, enjoying the company and the distraction. But as evening approached, the old anxiety crept back in. After dinner, I returned to my cabin to find a note slipped under the door. It was from the passenger services desk. "Miss Parker, we have not yet received confirmation of your return flight. Please visit the desk at your earliest convenience." My hands shook as I read the note. I tried to call David, but the call went straight to voicemail. I left a message, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, David, I just wanted to check on the return flight. The ship says they don't have any information. Can you please call me back?" I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, willing it to ring. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, a message arrived, not from David, but from Rachel. "Don't worry, Evelyn. We'll take care of everything. Just enjoy your vacation." I stared at the screen, frustration and fear warring inside me. I wanted to believe them, but the evidence was mounting. Something was wrong. I decided to take a walk, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. The ship was quiet. Most passengers gathered in the theater for the evening show. I wandered the decks, the cool breeze stinging my cheeks, the stars bright overhead. I found myself at the railing, staring out at the endless dark sea. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting my family first, about the sacrifices I'd made, the love I'd given. I wondered if any of it had mattered. As I turned to head back to my cabin, I saw a man standing a few yards away, watching me. He was tall, with dark hair and a sharp suit, one of the ship's staff, I guessed. He smiled when he saw me looking and nodded politely, but something about his gaze made me uneasy. I hurried back to my cabin, locking the door behind me. I tried to sleep, but every sound in the hallway made me jump. I thought about Gloria's words, "You're stronger than you think," and clung to them like a lifeline. I promised myself that I would get to the bottom of this, that I would not let fear control me. The next morning, I found Gloria in the dining room, her face lighting up when she saw me. "You look tired," she said gently. "I didn't sleep much," I admitted. "I think I'm just homesick." She squeezed my hand. "We'll get through this together. Whatever it is, you're not alone." Her words gave me strength. For the first time since boarding the Sapphire Dream, I felt a glimmer of hope. The days blurred together as the cruise continued, each one a strange mix of beauty and unease. I tried to enjoy the ports of call, St. Thomas with its pastel houses and turquoise waters, San Juan's cobbled streets and music drifting from open windows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living someone else's life. I took photos, bought small souvenirs, and sent cheerful messages to David and Rachel, pretending everything was fine. But every night, I returned to my cabin with a knot of worry in my chest. Gloria became my anchor. We shared meals, attended lectures, and even tried a salsa class together, laughing at our clumsy steps. She never pressed me for details, but she always seemed to know when I needed a gentle word or a quiet moment. One afternoon, as we sat on the sun deck with iced tea, she looked at me and said, "Evelyn, sometimes the hardest thing is admitting when we need help. But you don't have to do this alone." Her kindness made me braver. That evening, I decided to visit the passenger services desk again. Lucas greeted me with a concerned smile. "Still no word from the agency, Miss Parker. I'm sorry. Would you like me to help you book a return flight now? There are still seats available, but they're filling up fast." I hesitated, thinking of my savings. "How much would it cost?" He checked his screen. "About $900 for a one-way ticket to Miami. I know it's expensive, but it's the safest option." I nodded, my decision made. "Book it, please. I'll pay now." As I handed over my credit card, a wave of relief washed over me. At least now I had a way home, no matter what David or Rachel said. Lucas printed the ticket and handed it to me with a reassuring smile. "You're all set, Ms. Parker. If you need anything else, just let us know." I thanked him and hurried back to my cabin, clutching the ticket like a lifeline. I called Gloria to share the news, and she insisted I come to her cabin for a celebratory cup of tea. We sat on her balcony, watching the stars, and for the first time in days, I felt a flicker of control returning. But the sense of safety was short-lived. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. "We hope you're enjoying your cruise, Ms. Parker. Remember, accidents can happen at sea. Be careful near the railings." My hands shook as I read the words, the threat clear and chilling. I showed the note to Gloria, who immediately insisted we report it to ship security. The security officer, a tall woman named Officer Ramirez, listened carefully as I explained everything. The missing return ticket, the medication, the strange man on deck, and now the threatening note. She took the note, promised to review security footage, and assured me that extra patrols would be assigned to my floor. "Stay with your friend as much as possible," Officer Ramirez advised. "And if you see anything suspicious, call us immediately." I nodded, my heart pounding. I tried to act normal for the rest of the day, but every shadow seemed menacing, every stranger a potential threat. Gloria stayed by my side, her presence a comfort, but I could see the worry in her eyes. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized how much my world had changed. I had always believed that love and loyalty would protect me, that my family would never hurt me. But now, I understood that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who can do us the most harm. I promised myself that I would not be a victim. I would not let fear win. I would get home no matter what it took. The next morning, I woke to a sense of resolve I hadn't felt in years. I dressed carefully, choosing a bright blouse and my favorite earrings, small acts of defiance against the fear that had been growing inside me. Gloria met me for breakfast, her smile a little tighter than usual, but her presence as steady as ever. We talked about the day's activities, but beneath the surface, we both knew we were waiting for something to happen. After breakfast, we decided to spend the morning in the library. I tried to lose myself in a novel, but my mind kept drifting. I watched the other passengers, wondering if any of them noticed the tension that seemed to follow me like a shadow. Every time someone glanced my way, I felt a jolt of anxiety. Was it just curiosity or something more? Around noon, Officer Ramirez found us in the library. She pulled me aside, her expression serious. "Ms. Parker, we reviewed the security footage from your floor. We saw a man lingering near your cabin late last night. He's not a member of the crew, and he's not registered as a passenger. We're trying to identify him now." A chill ran through me. "Do you think he left the note?" "It's possible. We're increasing patrols and monitoring your cabin closely. Please, stay with your friend and avoid being alone in isolated areas of the ship." I thanked her, my heart pounding. Gloria squeezed my hand. "You're not alone, Evelyn. We'll get through this." We spent the afternoon together, attending a cooking demonstration and then relaxing by the pool. I tried to act normal, to enjoy the sunshine and the laughter around me, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, I half expected to see that man from the deck, lurking in the shadows. That evening, as we dressed for dinner, Gloria suggested we eat in the main dining room, where there would be plenty of people. "Safety in numbers," she said, with a reassuring smile. The dining room was bustling, the clatter of silverware and the hum of conversation filling the air. We found a table near the center of the room, surrounded by other passengers. For a while, I let myself relax, enjoying the food and the company. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him, the man from the deck, standing near the entrance, watching me. I tried to keep my composure, but my hands trembled as I reached for my glass. Gloria noticed and followed my gaze. "That's him, isn't it?" she whispered. I nodded, my throat tight. "He's been following me?" Gloria stood up, her voice calm but firm. "Stay here. I'm going to get Officer Ramirez." I watched as she crossed the room, weaving through the crowd. The man must have noticed, because he slipped out the door, disappearing into the hallway. Officer Ramirez arrived moments later, her face set in determination. "Which way did he go?" I pointed toward the exit. "He left as soon as Gloria went to get you." "We'll find him," she promised. "In the meantime, please stay in public areas and don't return to your cabin alone." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Gloria and I stayed in the lounge, surrounded by other passengers, until it was time to return to our cabins. Officer Ramirez escorted us, checking the hallway before letting us in. I locked the door behind me, my hands shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the return ticket Lucas had booked for me. It felt like a lifeline, a promise that I would make it home. I clung to that hope, refusing to let fear win. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about everything I had endured, the doubts, the threats, the betrayal. I realized that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. I would survive this. I would get home. And when I did, I would demand answers from David and Rachel, no matter how much it hurt. The final days of the cruise arrived, and with them, a sense of mounting tension. I counted down the hours until we would dock in Miami, each one feeling both endless and urgent. Gloria and I stayed close, rarely leaving each other's side. Officer Ramirez checked in with us regularly, her presence a comfort in the swirling uncertainty. I kept my return ticket tucked safely in my purse, touching it now and then as a reminder that I had a way out. On the second-to-last night, the ship hosted a gala dinner. Passengers dressed in their finest, the dining room transformed with white linens and sparkling lights. Gloria convinced me to wear my favorite blue dress, insisting that we deserved one night of celebration, no matter what shadows lingered. I agreed, wanting to reclaim a piece of normalcy, if only for a few hours. The evening began pleasantly enough. We chatted with a couple from Boston, laughed at the captain's jokes, and enjoyed a meal that tasted of hope. But as dessert was served, I noticed the man who had been following me standing near the bar, his eyes fixed on our table. He was dressed more formally than before, blending in with the crowd, but I recognized the cold calculation in his gaze. I leaned toward Gloria, my voice barely above a whisper. "He's here again," she nodded, her expression resolute. "We'll stick to the plan. Officer Ramirez is nearby. If he tries anything, we'll be ready." After dinner, the crowd moved to the lounge for dancing and music. Gloria and I stayed in the center of the room, surrounded by other passengers. I tried to enjoy the music, but my nerves were frayed. Every time I glanced at the bar, the man was there, watching. Suddenly, the ship lurched, a swell, nothing unusual, but enough to send a few glasses tumbling. In the commotion, I saw the man slip out of the lounge. Gloria caught my arm. "Let's go. Now." We made our way to the exit, scanning the hallway for Officer Ramirez. She appeared almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting for us. "He just left," I said urgently. "He's been following me all night," Officer Ramirez nodded. "We're tracking him on the security cameras." "Please, come with me." She led us to a small security office near the center of the ship. Monitors lined the walls, showing every hallway, every stairwell, every public space. On one screen, I saw the man moving quickly down a corridor toward the passenger cabins. "He's heading for your floor," Officer Ramirez said, her voice tight. She spoke into her radio, dispatching 2 officers to intercept him. We watched as the officers caught up to him near my cabin. He tried to talk his way out, claiming he was lost, but a search of his pockets revealed a set of lockpicks and a small vial of clear liquid. My stomach turned as I realized how close I had come to real danger. Officer Ramirez turned to me, her expression softening. "You did everything right, Ms. Parker. You stayed alert, you trusted your instincts, and you asked for help. We'll keep him in custody until we reach Miami. You're safe now." Relief washed over me, mingled with exhaustion and a deep, aching sadness. I thanked Officer Ramirez, then turned to Gloria, who hugged me tightly. "You made it, Evelyn. You're going home." That night, I slept deeply for the first time since the cruise began. I dreamed of sunlight and laughter, of home and safety. When I woke, the ship was already approaching the Miami port, the city skyline shining in the morning light. I packed my things, my hands steady. I was ready to face whatever waited for me on land. I was no longer the woman who had boarded the Sapphire Dream, full of hope and trust. I was someone new, someone who had survived. Disembarking in Miami felt surreal, as if I were stepping out of a long, strange dream. The port was bustling with passengers eager to return to their lives, families reuniting, laughter and tears mingling in the humid air. Gloria stayed by my side as we made our way through customs, her presence a steadying force. Officer Ramirez met us at the exit, her uniform crisp, her eyes kind. "We've turned the man over to local authorities," she told me quietly. "He won't be bothering you again. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call." I thanked her, my gratitude too deep for words. Gloria and I hugged tightly, promising to stay in touch. "You're stronger than you know, Evelyn," she whispered. "Don't let anyone make you doubt that again." I watched her disappear into the crowd, then took a taxi to the airport. The city flashed by in a blur of palm trees and sunlight, I checked in for my flight, clutching my return ticket like a talisman. As I waited at the gate, I called David. He answered on the second ring, his voice bright and casual. "Mom, you made it back. How was the cruise?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "It was eventful, David. I'll tell you everything when I get home." There was a pause, just long enough for me to sense the tension on his end. "I'm glad you had a good time. Rachel and I can't wait to see you." I hung up, my heart pounding. I wanted to believe that everything would be different now, that the danger was behind me. But I knew I needed answers. I needed to understand why my own son had sent me away with a one-way ticket, why he and Rachel had acted so strangely, why I had felt so alone. The flight home was quiet. I stared out the window at the clouds, replaying every moment of the cruise in my mind. I thought about the missing return ticket, the threatening note, the man who had followed me, the way David and Rachel had avoided my questions. I wondered how much of it had been planned, how much had been coincidence, and how much I would never truly know. When I landed, I took a taxi straight to my house. The familiar sight of my front porch, the roses blooming by the steps, brought a wave of relief. I let myself in, the air cool and still. I set my suitcase down and sat at the kitchen table, waiting for David and Rachel to arrive. They came an hour later, Rachel carrying a bouquet of flowers, David with a nervous smile. "Welcome home, Mom," he said, hugging me a little too tightly. I looked at them, searching their faces for the truth. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "About the cruise, about everything," Rachel's smile faltered. David looked away. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, David cleared his throat. "Mom, I know things have been strange. We just wanted you to have a break. We thought you needed time to yourself." I shook my head. "A break is one thing. Sending me away with no way home, letting me feel unsafe, that's something else. I want to know the truth." Rachel sat down, her hands twisting in her lap. "We were overwhelmed, Evelyn. The house, the bills, everything. We thought if you were gone for a while, we could get things under control. We never meant for you to feel threatened." I listened, my heart heavy. I wanted to believe them, but the fear and doubt lingered. "You could have just asked for help. You didn't have to send me away." David looked at me, his eyes shining with tears. "I'm sorry, Mom, I really am. I never wanted you to be hurt." I nodded, unsure if I could forgive them, but knowing that I had survived. I had found strength I didn't know I possessed. I had learned that sometimes the people we trust most can let us down, but that doesn't mean we have to lose ourselves. That night, as I lay in my own bed, I felt a sense of peace. I was home, I was safe, and I was stronger than ever. The days that followed were a strange blend of relief and reckoning. I moved through my house with new eyes, noticing the little things I'd missed before, the stack of unpaid bills on the counter, the tension in David's shoulders, the way Rachel avoided my gaze. I tried to settle back into my routines, but everything felt changed. The kitchen, once a place of comfort, now held echoes of doubt. The garden, where I'd spent so many peaceful mornings, seemed quieter, as if waiting for me to decide what would come next. David and Rachel tiptoed around me, their apologies hanging in the air like unfinished sentences. I wanted to forgive them, to believe that their actions had come from desperation rather than malice, but the memory of the cruise lingered. I found myself waking in the night, heart pounding, certain I'd heard footsteps in the hallway or the creak of a door. I reminded myself that I was safe, that the danger was over, but the fear was slow to fade. Gloria called every evening, her voice a lifeline. She listened as I recounted my days, offering gentle encouragement and the occasional stern reminder to take care of myself. "You did everything right, Evelyn," she told me. "You trusted your instincts. You protected yourself. That's something to be proud of." I tried to focus on small victories. I baked bread, filling the house with the scent of yeast and hope. I weeded the garden, letting the sun warm my face. I went for long walks, breathing in the crisp air and reminding myself that I was alive, that I had survived. One afternoon, as I was pruning the roses, Rachel joined me in the garden. She stood quietly for a moment, then said, "Evelyn, I know I can't undo what we did, but I want to try to make things right. If you'll let me." I looked at her, searching for sincerity. "Why didn't you just tell me you needed help? She shook her head, tears in her eyes. We were embarrassed. We thought we could handle it on our own. We never meant for you to feel abandoned or unsafe. I nodded, the anger in me softening just a little. Next time, talk to me. I can't help if I don't know what's wrong. She promised she would, and for the first time I believed her. That evening, David sat with me at the kitchen table, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Mom, I know I let you down. I know I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to try to earn back your trust. I studied his face, seeing not just my son, but a man struggling with his own failures and regrets. Trust is built, David. It takes time, but I'm willing to try. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything unspoken settling between us. I realized that healing would not come quickly, but it would come. I had survived the storm. Now it was time to rebuild. I called Gloria that night, telling her about my conversations with David and Rachel. She listened, then said, "You're doing the hard work, Evelyn. You're choosing to move forward. That's what matters." As I hung up, I felt a sense of hope. My family was not what I had imagined, but it was still mine. I was not the same woman who had boarded the Sapphire Dream, but I was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next. As autumn settled in, I found myself embracing the changes that had swept through my life. The leaves outside my window turned gold and crimson, drifting down to blanket the garden paths. I spent more time outdoors, letting the rhythm of the seasons remind me that nothing stays the same forever. Not pain, not fear, not even the wounds left by betrayal. David and Rachel worked hard to regain my trust. They invited me to dinner, included me in their plans, and most importantly, began to share their struggles honestly. I learned about the mounting debts, the sleepless nights, the sense of drowning that had driven them to make such desperate choices. It didn't excuse what they'd done, but it helped me understand. We talked openly, sometimes through tears, sometimes with laughter, slowly stitching our family back together. Gloria remained a constant presence in my life. We exchanged long letters and frequent phone calls, sharing stories of our days and dreams for the future. She encouraged me to try new things, to step outside the boundaries I'd drawn for myself. "You survived, Evelyn," she reminded me. "Now it's time to live." Inspired by her words, I joined a local book club. The first meeting was nerve-wracking, but the women welcomed me with warmth and curiosity. We discussed novels and memoirs, but also our own lives, our losses, our hopes, the ways we'd learned to start over. I found comfort in their company, a reminder that I was not alone in my journey. One afternoon, I received a letter from Officer Ramirez. She wrote to let me know that the man who had followed me on the cruise had been sentenced to several years in prison. "Your courage helped bring him to justice," she wrote. "Never doubt the strength you showed." I read her words over and over, letting them sink in. I had been brave. I had protected myself. I had survived. As the holidays approached, I decided to host Thanksgiving dinner for the first time in years. I invited David and Rachel, as well as a few neighbors and friends from my book club. Gloria sent a card and a box of her famous shortbread cookies, promising to visit in the spring. The house filled with laughter and the smell of roasting turkey. And for the first time since the cruise, I felt truly at home. That evening, as I washed dishes with Rachel, she turned to me and said, "Thank you for giving us another chance, Evelyn. I know we don't deserve it, but I'm grateful." I smiled, feeling the truth of her words. "We all make mistakes, Rachel. What matters is what we do next." Later, as I sat by the window, watching the first snowflakes drift down, I thought about everything I had endured. The fear, the betrayal, the loneliness, but also the strength, the kindness, the unexpected friendships. I realized that my life was not defined by what had happened to me, but by how I had chosen to respond. I was not the same woman who had boarded the Sapphire Dream, full of hope and trust. I was someone new, someone who had faced the darkness and found her way back to the light. Winter deepened, and with it came a sense of quiet reflection. I spent my mornings wrapped in a blanket by the window, sipping tea and watching the world outside transform under a layer of snow. The garden slept beneath its white cover, but I knew that come spring, life would return just as it had for me. I found comfort in the small rituals of daily life, baking bread, writing letters to Gloria, tending to the house. Each act was a reminder that I was still here, still moving forward. David and Rachel continued to rebuild their lives, and our relationship grew stronger with each honest conversation. There were setbacks, moments when old fears resurfaced, when trust wavered, but we faced them together. We learned to apologize, to forgive, to ask for help. I saw David become more open, more vulnerable, and I realized that, in his own way, he was healing too. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, David turned to me and said, "Mom, I know I can never undo what happened, but I want you to know that I'm grateful you gave me another chance. I promise I'll never take you for granted again." I reached for his hand, feeling the warmth and sincerity in his grip. "We can't change the past, David, but we can choose what we do with today." Rachel joined us, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Thank you, Evelyn, for everything." We sat in silence, the three of us, letting the peace settle around us like a soft blanket. I realized then that forgiveness was not a single act, but a choice I made every day. A choice to let go of anger, to embrace hope, to believe in the possibility of change. As the new year approached, I made a promise to myself to keep living with an open heart, to keep seeking joy in the everyday, to keep offering kindness to those who needed it most. I knew there would be hard days ahead. Grief does not vanish, and healing is never complete, but I also knew that I was not alone. I had found family in unexpected places, and I had learned that even the deepest wounds could become the seeds of new growth. Gloria visited in early spring, her laughter filling the house with light. We spent hours reminiscing about the cruise, about the fear and the courage, about the way we had both been changed. She brought me a small potted rosebush, a symbol of resilience and renewal. "For your garden," she said, pressing it into my hands. "A reminder that you can bloom again, no matter what." We planted it together, our hands cold, but our spirits warm. As we worked, Gloria said, "You know, Evelyn, you're one of the bravest women I've ever met." "You turned a nightmare into a new beginning," I smiled, feeling the truth of her words. "I couldn't have done it without you." As the days grew longer and the world thawed, I watched the rosebush send out new shoots, its leaves unfurling in the gentle sunlight. I thought about the journey I had taken, from fear to strength, from betrayal to forgiveness, from loneliness to love. I realized that my story was not just one of survival, but of transformation. I was not the same woman who had boarded the Sapphire Dream, full of hope and trust. I was someone new, someone who had faced the darkness and found her way back to the light. Someone who had learned that, no matter how lost we feel, there is always a way home. And as I stood in my garden, the rosebush blooming at my feet, I knew that I was finally, truly free.